This year has been a challenging one for many reasons. Challenging briefs, limited access to a studio, remote learning, difficult learning environments, and the zombie apocalypse that has been sweeping the world for over a year. But despite all of these new changes to the world, I have adapted and continued to work toward my future of being an animator. The work I have created over the last year has been affected by the new world. For the first 2 years of university, I would spend a good few hours in the studio either in the morning before classes or in the afternoon after lectures, but now all my life has been spent here, the living room at my parents' house. No privacy, no professional working environment, and no quick access to tutors. The only thing separating me from my family watching TV 10 feet away is a blanket on a string. My computer has now taken over multiple roles. Back before the outbreak, it would be how I relax after a long day at uni. But now it's where I work, relax, socialise, and escape reality for a few golden hours a day. Working where I relax is like eating dinner on the toilet. It just feels wrong, and I'd like to keep those activities to their designated spaces. So at the beginning of lockdown, I had no enthusiasm to work. I would maybe get a few hours of work done a week before giving in, and this clearly impacted my work. I at one point considered giving up on uni altogether. I felt defeated by the hand that life had dealt me, and I turned to the wisdom of Google to save me, and save me it did. I found an article called In Lockdown and Running Out of Ideas, 6 Tips to Stay Creative by John Mancoca, author of Creative. He had a lot of really good advice that resonated with me. Don't assume you have no chance, just go ahead and do it. Mistakes are an integral part of the creative process and shouldn't be discouraging. And my favourite, creativity doesn't magically descend from the sky. After these words of sage wisdom from a true titan of design, I was renewed with energy and got back to work. I started to recreate my routine from the previous years and adapt them to my new environment. I woke up every day at 8 am and worked till 1, getting at least 35 hours of creativity a week, and because of this change of attitude and schedule, I was able to create 5 pieces of art. The first was a live brief for White Rabbit Films, a student film company that I had worked with in the past to create their branding. They commissioned me to make a cinematic intro that they could use at the start of all their films as well as for promotions. I took the brief gladly as it would help me hone my skills as an animator and improve my client communication. The brief stated that they wanted the cinematic to have heavy connotations toward traditional filmmaking while showing their previous films. I was in constant contact with the client, talking them through my ideas and changes I made along the way. In the end, I produced a 13-second animation that both myself and the client was pleased with, as well as an extended version for promotions. The outcome perfectly matched the brief with black and white imagery of film tape showing clips of their previous films and revealing their brand. Some improvement could be made, such as the film tape isn't to realistic standards, as traditional film tape is more rectangular with the sprocket holes spaced further apart, but it's a cartoon rendition and gets the message across. The animation will have a wide impact on the filmmaking industry as it is aiming to forge a new path for filmmaking. Even though the film industry has pulled away from their traditions using new technology to change the way their films are made and shown, I feel that with every creative practice it is important to remember where you've come from, as it helps to inform your future decisions. The pioneers of the past made mistakes so that you can learn from them, and not accepting their advice would be an act of creative self-harm. The next project was a disaster. I spent a large majority of the deadline fumbling around running into creative walls. None of the ideas were sticking or just not executing them properly. The brief was to create a compilation of animations using imagery and sound. I based these animations on strange sayings and conversations. This is because I conveniently had a large collection from the weirdness of myself and my friends talking online daily. It started with directly turning the phrases into imagery, such as dog slippers and dick hammock, but they were over the top and crude. This didn't work because it wasn't funny, it was just uncomfortable and made little to no sense, so I took the conversations and turned them into short skits. This also didn't work because it was like explaining a joke to make it funny. At the time, I was running a Dungeons and Dragons campaign with a few friends online each week, and I would come away with a few interesting highlights that the players caused. With the deadline drawing near and me rapidly running out of ideas, I went ahead and animated a handful of the highlights and came out with the Martyrs Adventures, a short compilation of animations based on my D&D adventures. Unfortunately, because I'd been experimenting with the project so long and running into so many dead ends, the short compilation was cut even shorter at only 11 seconds. This meant that after all the trial and error, I had very little to show for it. Another issue with the animation was that outside of my friend group and the other players, it didn't make any sense. It's like explaining an inside joke to people who weren't there. This project could have worked if it was on a much larger scale, and it was a series of animations like Dingo Doodle's Fool's Gold series or Z Bashu's The Cold Road Campaign Diary, where they give in-depth explanations and introductions to the world and characters. The Dungeons and Dragons community is a large and rapidly growing one, so there is a target audience for this animation, and if executed to a higher standard with more to show from it, I know it would have been received well. Although the entire project was a disaster from start to finish, I learned a lot about being a creative, and like Jean-Marc Mancorga said, what is often called failing is actually learning. So I learned a lot from this project, and I will carry its failure to better me in the future. I was then asked to make a 3 to 5 minute film based on my chosen topic, and I chose, surprisingly, animation. For this, I made a brief introduction to what animation is and the career paths of an animator. The film is simple but effective, with narration over various imagery to keep engagement. I talk about philosophy, statistics, and skepticism, but end on a positive note, mentioning that as long as you enjoy it, it's worth it. Within the film, I demonise working for a large animation company like Disney. There are political and cultural reasons for this. I love the work Disney makes and have been brought up with their films as a kid, but I cannot overlook their troublesome past and how huge corporations are ran. In the past, Disney has produced historically appropriate animations showing racist, homophobic, and fascist imagery. For its time, this was not unusual, as the world was, and some could say still is, intolerant of many people. And just as filmmakers shouldn't forget their history, neither should animators. Disney is one of the largest corporations in the world and has started to spread its reach far within the entertainment industry, not just within animation. Since Disney's recent boom, they have taken over Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, The Muppets, Chronicles of Narnia, The Pirates of the Caribbean, Winnie the Pooh, and Indiana Jones, growing their entertainment empire to unbeatable size only rivaled by Apple and Amazon. This project received a lot of positive feedback, with the main criticism was that they wanted more, which is the best feedback to hear because it means they enjoyed it so much that they are hungry for more. I enjoyed this project because it was a nice change of pace compared to my other work, all being animations. Making a film isn't too different from making animation. You start with a topic, gather resources, create imagery, add audio, and release it to be criticised by the public. These similarities, the positive feedback, and the fact I enjoyed making the film has shown me that this could be a career path for me. Coming from an art and design education could allow me to make films that people with a photography and film education could not. This would mean altering my envisioned future, but I would still be a moving image creative, so it's not too far off the path. The next project was inspired by Teleperte's 366 Days of Teleperte and the yearly challenge Inktober. Teleperte's 366 Days of Teleperte is a large collection of animations that were made daily for a year. These animations include violence, sexuality, humour, and various emotions, making the collection for a mature audience. This is in stark contrast to what animation is widely seen as being for children and young audiences. The animation spanned a large genre as well. Some were to subvert expectations, some were purely abstract, and others were part of a running narrative. Inktober is similar, but is a worldwide creative challenge that gives artists a prompt list that they use to make a traditionally ink-based drawing every day for October. My live brief challenged me to make a looping GIF every day for the month of March based on a predetermined prompt list which I had to upload to various social medias to display that I was on track. At the start of the brief I was unsure how the project would turn out, as the animations on their own wouldn't be substantial enough, but the collection of 31 looping animations could be. Over the months, my animations became more creative, faster produced, and higher in quality. I also got more comfortable with the software, my drawing pad, and animation techniques. By the end of March, I had drastically improved my animation skills, increased my portfolio size, and gave confidence in my practice. I had also developed my own style of animation from this project because it gave me complete freedom to experiment. The style started with extreme boiling line with the shapes in constant motion. This style works for shapes that are constantly changing, such as fire or lightning being unpredictable, but doesn't translate well to solid objects. I kept the boiling line style but toned it down, keeping the structure of the shape but still conveying movement. I have also kept bold black outlines as a staple of my style. This is in reference to old school animations such as Disney and Pixar. Using thick black outline gives clear staging between what parts of the animation are important and what's just background and props. Overall, this project was a great success. I met my brief and improved as an animator. The only improvement that could be made to this work is to carry it on and do it every day for a year, possibly using the process as a warm-up for the day. The compilation doesn't have a wide impact on the world of art and design, because it is mainly created to help improve myself as an animator, while showing I have an understanding of the creative world. The last piece was my final major project on my FMP. This was the most ambitious and complex project I had ever done. In the brief I created, it stated I would create an informational comedy animation based on Viking culture. I have always been a fan of Viking culture as it is a large part of my own culture and on a larger scale, the culture of England. Vikings are often depicted as ruthless barbarians with only killing and pillaging on their minds, but this is a massive stereotype. In the article, 7 Misconceptions About the Vikings That Might Surprise You by Doug Ray, they explain that not all of the Norse were involved in raiding voyages. Most performed all kinds of trades from farming to blacksmithing. So when they came over to England to settle, they brought their culture and way of life with them that is still visible today within pop culture. A large number of English people are direct descendants of Vikings, 1 in 33 actually, and Viking DNA makes up for 6% of English DNA as well, so I believe that more people should know about theirs or their neighbours' heritage. Within recent years, Viking pop culture massively increased with various shows, films and games focusing on Viking and Norse cultures such as Warhammer, Assassin's Creed and Valheim, so it seems if there's any time to make a Viking based animation, now is the time to do it. The story is about 2 Vikings on their way to Valhalla. One is a traditional Viking from 800 AD and the other is a modern Viking from the 2000s. The Vikings are vastly different from one another, which cause tension and anger towards each other, but with the intervention of the god Odin, who shows the Vikings they are not so different, they sail to Valhalla together. This piece of animation is a cultural narrative of acceptance of one another, because as cheesy as it sounds, we're all the same deep down. The only way we can get through is with acceptance of each other. The style of the animation is using what I learned from the GIF a Day project but refining it to keep the overall shape of the characters, but each frame is different enough to inject some style and movement. This makes the animation much more visually appealing and shortens the time it takes to animate. This animation will open a new avenue of visual storytelling for me to pursue, as it's where I want to take my career within the animation industry. In conclusion, this last year has been difficult, but a diamond is not made without pressure, and I know that I have vastly improved along with my work because of these challenges. From here, after I finish university, I aim to join a creative studio such as Bark and Bite, or continue my education and do a master's degree to become Llewyn Davis, Master of Animation.